So a person goes into farming because they like it, for the same reason they go into the Army. They like it. Or teaching. You don't go in for money. I've been a soldier, a teacher, and a farmer. I eat it up. Maybe it's because I have some kind of masochistic tendency. I don't know. Since I've been around, this tree hasn't changed much at all. These houses are the same houses, essentially, that were here around 1910, 1920. Oroville has not changed much in the past 50 years.
I've lived in Oroville more than 60 years, and then I thought I had to come to California, and I went through kind of some tough times, and times when I had a job and didn't have a job, and happened to be in Sacramento, and Dan Beebe, who was the publisher of the Oroville Mercury, happened to be in Sacramento looking for a reporter, and so I came up to Oroville. I had never lived in a small town before, and it proved my undoing.
The initial appeal of Oroville, obviously the name Gold Town, was gold. But people went from that into timber and then into agriculture. And Butte County became basically an agricultural community.
It's kind of a small community, so we get the community feeling. We got a lot of, everybody, most of the folks around, and everybody's willing to pitch in and help each other out. And so it's a nice area to live in.
Well, we opened our furniture store in '69, and then you could walk down the street and you just knew everyone. You'd say hello. Now it's all strange. It's so very changed, very changed.
Now, I live here. It has nice scenery and it's reasonably clean. There's not much smog. And the clientele I have are all right, so I can suffer through.
Well, here we are, 1333 Pomona Avenue. Prior to that was 1111 Pomona Avenue, where my grandfather, Ole Boards and Lund, built the family home. My grandfather came here in 1866, not here in Oroville, but the United States. And he went back to Norway to get other members of the family and friends to join him. And by 1880, something like that, he had a party together, and they came through Truckee, where he married one of the members of the party, Barrett Hammer, and he had a farm over in the Coast Range. And after a couple of years of trying, he just walked off the darn thing and came over here, where he did a lot of building, and he worked for gold mining. So my mother has been a resident here since about 1894, 1895, although being married to an Army officer, she's been, like me, about 50 years away from home. When my mother passes away, she's the last of her generation, and the only one of my generation here is myself. And the only one of the next generation is no one. So when my mother goes, that should be the end of the 110 years that the Lund family has been here.
See, my oldest son, Fred, knew that he wanted to be a doctor. He wanted to make people well, and so on and so forth. Richard, the youngest one of all, wanted to be a scientist. He became a scientist. Unfortunately, he's passed away. Then Robert came along, and he was a little bit different. He wasn't sure what he wanted to be, but he said he just wanted to live and have a good time.
I simply believe in statistics. Way back when I first started parachuting in the early 40s, I knew my parachute would open. The odds against it not opening, the odds against its opening is very small. The odds are very small. And if it doesn't open, you have a reserve, and you pull that. And the odds against that opening are very small. When you put those odds together, you can say you can make a parachute jump, and one or the other of the parachutes or both are going to open. And that's been my philosophy of life. If somebody shoots at me, the odds are he's going to miss the first shot. Now, I won't be there for the second shot. You know, my mother was just saying, when I said there's 60 miles of road out there, and you get really screwed up, and she was saying there's 600 miles. I said, you're out of your mind.
It twists and turns, Robert.
I have walked and run over every foot of the wildlife area.
That's
Believe
how you are,
me.
like you are.
What?
You know how you are. You're a little different.
I know I'm a little different.
Quite a bit.
I didn't get to finish the statement. You asked what do other people think of me. And I didn't say kook, but I said, what's the word I used? Not eccentric. Character. But they always put a comma, but we respect you. So, character, yes. But a respected one. I'm unorthodox. I wouldn't have enjoyed being a Green Beret as much as I did, where you're very independent. You work alone. You work in the swamps. You work in the snow. You work in the mountains. You work in the desert. And you work with many cultures. They had a perimeter defense set up and they had these womb tombs, you know. And the Japanese had used as bunkers. And it started to rain, and I found a machine gun opening up, and I found I was outside the line. The machine gun was here, and I'm here, and the hostiles would be there. That's a lousy position. So I came back in, looked for a place to put my bunk, and I found a womb tomb. I climbed in. It smelled real musty. But I slept. And during the night, I reached around. I felt something like hair. Felt around. Whoops, I'm sleeping on a dead Japanese soldier. The point was, back in the 30s, that the service, perhaps more than any other profession, was one in which the son followed the father's footsteps. Ho cow! Too much water in this check, so I'll let a little bit out. Wants to hold on. Squirrel holes. My father was that way. He worked and he worked and he worked. I've got a sort of a bug I can't get rid of. It's a guilty complex. If I'm not up before 8 o'clock every day in the week and producing something, I feel somebody's after me. Watch me. Hey, what are you doing? Goofing off. So I have to be up and working. Nobody in his right mind would normally go into farming to make money. For example, a minimum-sized rice farm like this would cost about $1.5 million for 500 acres of land, $1 million for the equipment. If you work real hard all year, you might make $25,000 or $30,000 on your labor. I mean, occasionally you have a sleepless night in combat in farming, you have one after the other. Where's the next dollar going to come from? What's the weather going to be like tomorrow? What's it like right now? What's the market going to be like? What are the prices going to be like and the costs? I mean, that's stress. Well, the Chinese going to hit your position tonight? Yeah, it comes and goes. Or the Viet Cong, or the NVA, or whatever. It comes and it goes. In farming, it doesn't come and go. You can get stuck any day in a week. You attack that hill with this bunch, that bunch, and this bunch, and that bunch. You're hit with artillery, you're hit with machine guns, you're hit with rockets, you're hit with grenades, you're hit with rifle fire. And somebody will get through. It's a nice, quiet night, and thank God that wind has died down to about 5 miles an hour now. So if we want to fly something on, we could. But it was pretty deadly yesterday, and most of today. But my father said our job is, as pacifists, to prevent war. So when I talk with some of these peaceniks, or we'll say Jehovah's Witnesses or others, I say, I'm a professional pacifist. And they feel, well, they got a brother in arms. I say, yes, I'm a regular Army officer. My whole life has been dedicated to ensuring the peace. The Silver Star is the third highest award for gallantry. The Legion of Merit I had received for my service in Vietnam as senior advisor to the 9th ROC Division and deputy commander of 5th Special Forces for a short while before I went with the ROCs. The Soldier's Medal is the highest award for heroism, and that involved a typhoon where I was rescuing or helping rescue Vietnamese that were in the floodwaters, hanging on to the skids of a helicopter. And the farm proper I called crossover bar, which is a plus and minus symbol on a typewriter, is a symbol in Japanese for samurai, Bushido meaning way of the warrior, and having received the award of Hwarang, which is a 3rd century Korean samurai order, I felt that a crossover bar, samurai, would be a good brand for my cattle and a good name for my farm. My father always said that if we did as well as he did, we were failures, because we were starting where he was. Hence, since he was a colonel, I'd have to make general to do as well as he did. He had the equivalent of a college degree. I had to get a handful. If he had a Legion of Merit, I had to get a couple of them. He had 3 kids, I had 7 kids.
Was also military, ex-military, and he said, you know, it's too bad that Bob didn't make general, because his whole life's goal would have been met early, and then he could have gone on with the rest of his living.
But they said I didn't make it this time, but one more tour. It looked pretty good, and that's about the time I said, that's it. I'm not going to be a senile old colonel in the Army looking for a general. I'd rather get out and be my own man. So I got out. Betty, my first wife of 25 years, put up with an awful lot, 25 years of Army, and finally she just had enough. I was saying that when I had a classified mission, I had to leave her and the children in Japan without telling her where I was going and infiltrate back to Korea. And prior to that, in the Foreign Area Specialist Training Program, when I had all the family living in Japan on the economy, not in a military base, out in Setagayaku, Nozawa Machi. completely on the economy, nothing but Japanese, and she didn't speak Japanese.
It never occurred to him until I mentioned to him, you have never known her when her physical self was in a normal state of glandular production, because the first baby was born 9 months and 10 minutes after they were married, and they had them every 2 years or closer.
My Panamanian tour was halfway through that tour. And, of course, she had to play hostess to the president of Panama, to General Torrijos, to Noriega, Paredes, the rest of them. And that was fine, except she pointed out to me, I'm not paid by Uncle Sam, which is true. She had 7 children to raise. And she said, that's it. I quit. So she quit the Army before I did. I followed her about 3 months later. I retired. But that was the end of our marriage. Fine woman, fine wife, and a fine mother. But we had difficulties when I got back in accommodating to the children. I mean, the years I'd been away, they were like strangers. If I'm not mistaken, this was built around 1900. My father poured the concrete underneath it when he got out of the Army in around 47. And he fixed up the garage. But we were talking about Japanese harakiri, which is really seppuku, the polite way of saying it, which is ritualistic self-destruction, going through a certain ritual of disemboweling. It's an honorable practice, not the same as jisatsu, which is suicide. That's disgraceful.
We had been down here, and often Gertrude needed support, and she would call Dick and say, things are bad up here, and Dick would drive up and then come back again in a day or two when Fred had been going through a deep depression. So this had been going on for a while. I don't think anybody realized how serious it was. Gertrude probably did.
She doesn't even talk about it. She doesn't want to talk about it, doesn't want to, just prefer it is done. I mean, she certainly must feel a sense of responsibility that her husband would do this. He said he was going to, and he did. She'd gone to doctors and told them her husband's having a trouble. But he was so rational. Talking with them, they would tell him, your wife Gertrude thinks such and such. And he'd put it down, and his logic would impress them, no, he's all right. They couldn't see it. The man was seriously in trouble.
We did get the call while we had guests over one night saying that he had shot himself. It really had a profound effect on Dick. I think he had ups and downs and depressions, and I think he looked at it thinking, I don't want this to happen to me, but he also missed his dad and really felt there was a great loss.
I think it's the first time I came close to crying from the time I was about 6 years old. It was a shock. I was at the Foreign Area Specialist Training School. I had my family in Japan, and I was studying Japanese for 4 years at PhD level. And my mother said, your father's gone, and she explained what happened. I remember for a moment I couldn't talk. I choked up.
All right. Bye.
That's ridiculous. I'm here.
I know, but you have to get back to the farm.
I can take you to the doctor.
Huh?
I make my own hours.
She could take me. She had the time.
Oh, for God's sake.
I thought you had to go back to the farm.
I make my own time.
I know.
I'm 70 this year. I'm closer to 70 than 69. Maybe when I'm 75 or something, I'll put a home out there on that hill I showed you. I really like that. Was it called the Windsor House or something in Central California, where some gal believed as long as she was making improvements she'd live, and she had stairs going nowhere? I'd like to keep on developing the farm to make it an aesthetic place and to make it a sound ecosystem and an attractive place to live. I think the nuclear family was a primary institution that shaped us, and that was true, I think, of most families in the 20s and 30s. We got away from that after World War II, and I think we've suffered from it. All the way through, you have this parent-child relationship, the filial devotion to the parent and the obligation of the parent to the child. It really stems from the nuclear family. We have to have some type of organization or we have chaos. About 45 years ago, we were swimming in a little creek down there, a little irrigation ditch. And Richard said, a turtle, and he grabbed for a turtle head. It was a water snake, not a water moth, thank God, a water snake about so big. I'll never forget that. Living is difficult. Death is easy. That's the easy way out. I don't respect a person that can't face living and has to destroy himself. I felt very, very bad subsequently when I found that the man I was talking to had lost his son that way. And I never dreamed that within days or weeks I would lose my father that way. I'm out there every day with a shovel or a pick and putting in barbed wire and pulling calves, and the old hands get kind of stiff. You do that for years and years and years and years when you're not jumping out of planes in fright and whatnot. Some of this music that you hear, I learned, the first one I learned in about 1930. That's 61 years. These old fingers, I'm surprised they still can find the notes. If I stop and think about it, I'm lost. But here's a light piece that I learned 50 years ago. If I think about it, I'm gone.